From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
In what appears to be a game of chess, the owners of Twin River are looking to move Newport Grand to a parcel of land in Tiverton just on the Massachusetts border, putting immediate competition to a proposed casino just 20 minutes away in New Bedford. But there are several hurdles to traverse before any new ground is broken. This week on the first half of Newsmakers, the CEO of Twin River, John Taylor. Then, another proposed move. This time the Pawsox want Providence, but are lawmakers willing to share the risk? Our guest on the second half, Rhode Island State Representative Doreen Costa. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Ted Nesi is off this week, so we welcome back our friend, political reporter from Rhode Island Public Radio, Ian Donis. Hello, everyone. John, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thanks
it's
for
good to have you. So we take this on a Friday morning, and last night in New Bedford, the mayor of New Bedford said the proposed move of Newport Grand to Tiverton is an effort to influence the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. What do you say to him?
I've heard it referred to that way. I've heard it referred to as a bluff, and I assure you it's neither of those things. We are very, very serious about engaging the town of Tiverton in a conversation about building a gaming facility at that location.
Let's talk about that location. So as we get into this conversation, I want viewers to get a good idea of where this proposed casino is going to go. So we're going to bring up a map of that. This is on the north side of Tiverton, and it's just touching the Fall River border. And as they bring up that map, how did you come? There it is on the screen. How did you come to this parcel of land? How did you find this?
So we really were looking for a couple of things. We were looking for a place with minimal impacts to the local community, and we were looking for a location which was proximate to where Newport Grand's customers primarily come from. And today those customers come from southeastern Massachusetts and Aquidneck Island. So that location on that off-ramp made all the sense in the world. I mean, the other thing that people, one of the other things we looked at is propensity in the past to support gaming measures, and the people of Tiverton have historically supported at a rate higher than the rest of the state, which demonstrated in our mind an openness to the issue. So that's how we got there.
But you say it made all the sense in the world, but they're just 20 minutes away. There's a proposed casino in Massachusetts. I mean, isn't that risky?
What we would envision building, which will be subject to a discussion that we have with the town. So we didn't go there with a lot of drawings or a laundry list of amenities that we thought about putting there. We basically told the town that we want to come and have a conversation and see what you can feel comfortable with. So we went in from that perspective, but we knew from the outset that we weren't going to build a $650 million destination casino. That's not what we believe that location can support. Not what we believe that the market necessarily can support. So we're looking at a convenience casino where people can come, spend a couple of hours, be entertained, and leave.
John, to follow up on Tim's question, as we are just discussing, there is the expectation there will be a more glitzier resort casino with more attractions somewhere nearby in Massachusetts. How will the more modest convenience casino that your entity is proposing be able to effectively compete with that?
So people ask the question all the time. You're a convenience casino at Lincoln, and how do you compete against two of the world's largest casinos? First of all, we understand the market.
But there's more physical separation from the Connecticut casinos and Lincoln?
Yeah, well, let me finish. So a mere 5 years ago, the spread between revenue between Foxwoods and Twin River was $17 million in a month. So they outperformed us by $17 million. Last month, we outperformed them by $3.5 million. 5 years ago, our market share was 18% in the region. Today, it's over 30%. So we have figured out a way from a convenience perspective to attract people to get them to come spend time with us, and we fully expect we're going to be able to do that in Tiverton. And the other thing is, in highly competitive markets, which this one is becoming, convenience is absolutely critical. So if you look at if you look at that location, and again, subject to this discussion we're going to have with the town of Tiverton, if you look at that location and you look at the number of people within a couple of miles, it is a very convenient location. And people don't always necessarily want to go to a destination casino and have to drive in and have to park in a garage and find their way onto an elevator. They want to pop in and pop out, and that's what this location affords us.
At what point will the casino market in southern New England be saturated?
That's a good question. You know, I hear about these competitive bids in Massachusetts, and I will tell you, if I went to my shareholders or my investors and said I want to put $650 million into that location or into this market right now, they would say I was crazy. So, you know, right-sized in the right location, yes, it makes all the sense in the world for us to do that. We're going to go through this conversation with the residents of Tiverton, and we're going to construct a program that we hope that they can support.
We're speaking with the chairman of the board of Twin River, John Taylor, and before we get, I'm sure a lot of Tiverton residents are watching this, so I do want to get specific on what the deal could mean to them. But follow up to a question you had on market share, you gave some pretty good numbers there. I mean, you're now outpacing in terms of revenue Foxwoods, sounds like, and you have a bigger chunk of the market share. But has the market shrank? Is it a smaller pie?
There has been some shrinkage. Some of that, or a lot of that, is related to the western part of this, where Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun were drawing heavily from New York City, and now there are casinos effectively in the metro area at Aqueduct. So yes, the market has shrunk a bit.
Let's talk about Tiverton, and not to put you on the spot, if you don't have these numbers, that's fine, but what does Lincoln get from Twin River in terms of revenue annually, say, or however you break it down?
So as a percentage of their budget, Twin River represents about 12% of Lincoln's budget. What we think will happen with a minimal program, and again, a lot of this is going to be based on what we ultimately go to the voters in Tiverton with in terms of the size and the scope. But we think that with a minimal program, we could represent around 10% of the town of Tiverton's budget.
Do you know what the percentages are hard when we don't know what the actual budgets are? So what are we talking in Lincoln? Is that like $10 million?
Yeah, just over $10 million. In the town of Lincoln, probably around $4 million.
Is that comparable to what Newport Grand is right now to Newport?
It's probably higher than what Newport. I mean, and when I talk about what Twin River means to Lincoln and what this project means to Tiverton, that's all sources, right? So that's gaming revenue, it's property tax, it's food and beverage tax. So I think, given the proximity to the player, given the fact that this will be a facility that draws from that Fall River and that southeastern market, we're going to be closer to the population. We think we can drive the business more effectively there than we could in Newport. There's
some waterways, wetlands in proximity to your envisioned location in Tiverton. What hurdles would have to be overcome for your project to go ahead there, assuming you have local support and statewide support?
So when we first started looking at that particular parcel of land, we quickly came to the realization that there were wetlands in the area. And so a lot of the issues related to water, we've already considered. So we believe that we can put a program on there and meet or exceed the Rhode Island standard from an environmental perspective. And if there are any considerations in Massachusetts and that standard is higher, we'll meet that standard as well.
We hear residents near the site say that they are not in support, not surprisingly, but it is a relatively isolated location from most of Tiverton's population. Would this proposal fundamentally change the character of Tiverton?
I don't think. I think that's going to be part of the discussion that we have with the town. Again, we looked for a location that was as remote as we could possibly get it, and obviously there are going to be people who are impacted in the same way that there are people who are impacted in Lincoln. But I think the community's experience with us in Lincoln is going to be instructive to the folks in Tiverton, and we hope there's a dialogue between the two communities to see just what kind of neighbor we are, not only what the benefits are, but what kind of neighbor we are, and the steps that we take to mitigate those impacts in Lincoln, and I think we'll do that in Tiverton as well.
You need state and local support here in terms of you have to get the gambling license to go to be transferred, and as you keep pointing out throughout the program, you need the support. You need the support from Tiverton. What if you can't get this through? What's next?
So we are committed. We're committed to the Newport Grand acquisition, and irrespective of what happens in this discussion that we have with the town of Lincoln, town of Tiverton, we're committed to Newport. The other important thing to note when we talk about our numbers and the success that we've had, when we acquire Newport Grand, even in the Newport Grand location, we're in a very unique situation. We will have two properties jointly operated and jointly marketed, with the amenities of one being able to be leveraged by the other. Nobody else in this market is going to have that ability, and whether we're in Newport or we're in Tiverton, we think there's tremendous opportunities that exist there, particularly from a marketing perspective.
So you won't shut down Newport Grand if you can't move to Tiverton?
We're going to work as hard as we can to keep Newport Grand as successful as we can for as long as we're in Newport.
The thinking is that Rhode Island will see about a $100 million hit from the advent of casinos in Massachusetts. I know this might be difficult for you to put numbers on it, but if your proposal goes ahead in Tiverton, what effect would it have in blunting that cut?
So a lot of that's going to be driven by what the ultimate program that we build on that property is, and what are the amenity set that we have. So we haven't put any numbers on revenue projections at a high level, or what kind of impact that we're going to be able to have on that Massachusetts impact on gaming revenue.
Do you think it would be in Rhode Island's interest to consider adding more than one additional convenience casino?
If you look at the map and you look at where the population is, if the voters in Tiverton are supportive of this concept, we will be in our minds, we will be in exactly the two best locations from a Rhode Island perspective to compete for those players.
You're always going to get moral objections over casinos, no matter what the plan is and what the cuts are going to be, so on and so forth. You talk about a modest gambling house right now. What do you say to people who are concerned that it's just going to be a slippery slope? You say it's going to be what it is now, but it's just going to expand and expand as the demand for more gambling revenue grows. Can you promise here and now that what you're proposing now and whatever you build, if it gets built, is going to stay the same 10 years down the road?
What I can promise is that the town is ultimately going to have the control over what happens there. So we're going to go through this discussion, and we're going to come up with a program that hopefully a majority of the residents there can get comfortable with. Beyond that, and over time, just like it is in Lincoln, they have the ultimate control over our liquor license, over our entertainment licenses, over our zoning. So if there's ever to be a change at some point in the future, the town's going to have control over that. We enjoy a tremendous working relationship in the town of Lincoln, and we hope to develop something similar in Tiverton.
I asked you if what would happen if all things didn't go well, so let me ask you if everything went well and it went all your way. What's the best case timeline for you, John? When would you break ground if everything fell into place?
To go all the way to the end, I think the earliest we could do anything, be up and running in that location is at some point in 2018, and early would be the best case. But there's a lot of things that have to happen. We're going to go before the town on May 4th and begin the conversation. All
right, final question for you. You're a Pawtucket native. In the next half of the program, we're going to bring in State Representative Doreen Costa, and we're going to be talking a lot about the Paw Sox. I got to ask you, you're a baseball fan too, right?
I am.
All right. What do you think?
So, as a Pawtucket native, obviously, I'm a little disappointed that the Paw Sox will be leaving my hometown. With that said, I understand that the economics of baseball have changed. and that they need to consider their options elsewhere. I think there's a lot of discussion that has to happen between now and when the state makes a decision about what they're asking for is appropriate or not.
But the big question is, should there be a shot clock for pitches?
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. John Taylor, chairman of Twin River, thank you very much for joining us on the program. When we come back, we are going to be talking Paw Sox and other legislative happenings with State Representative Doreen Costa. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Ted Nesi is off this week, so joining me on the panel from Rhode Island Public Radio is Ian Donis, and our guest for the second half is State Representative Doreen Costa, Republican from North Kingstown and Exeter. Representative, you oppose the move of the Paw Sox from Pawtucket to Providence with the current outline deal, which is roughly $120 million in state money over 30 years. Why?
Well, as soon as the story broke that the Paw Sox were probably looking to move to Providence, my cell phone started ringing off the hook. I've got calls from Westerly to Woonsocket, from Narragansett, saying, Rep, could this possibly be another 38 Studios deal? Is this going to cost us exactly the $120 million? They didn't, the taxpayers didn't know, and the 38 Studios debacle is still fresh in their minds. I mean, we're still paying for that. Unfortunately, it's still in the budget. The taxpayers that I've talked to don't want it. You know that I own a coffee house. My customers come in every day and they're like, are they moving? Are they staying? We don't want to pay for it. This is all that I've been hearing since the news broke. So, so I put the press release out and I'm like, we can't continue the track that we're on and have another 38 Studios and have the taxpayers be on the line.
But isn't the difference between 38 Studios and this one transparency? I mean, some people argue here that the problem with 38 Studios was, and you can appreciate this. I know you weren't there, but you're there now, and you know that a lot of that, the argument was that happened behind closed doors and in whispers in rooms, and that this one is playing out in a public stage.
It doesn't matter if right now it's money, it's taxpayer money. They're asking for money. We don't have money. They want breaks. They want tax breaks. There's tons of small business owners in the state that would like a tax break too. We don't get them. None of us get them. It's not fair to the taxpayers. Mr. Skeffington, I've met briefly. Lots of money. Lots of money.
Just so our viewers are aware, Jim Skeffington is one of the new primary owners of the Pawtucket Red Sox.
Super nice guy. Great intent. Okay, but find other people. Find donors. Find investors. Let's not put the taxpayers on the hook.
As Tim said, the proposal is $120 million in lease payments over 30 years. Would you support any level of that to keep the Paw Sox in Rhode Island?
No. Here is what I would like to see. And for what it's worth, now I have no stake in the game. I mean, I don't live in Pawtucket. I go to McCoy. I love McCoy. Let's redo McCoy.
But the ownership says that's not on the table.
Well, it should be on the table,
though.
Well,
you can say that, but other people might say the reality is it's Providence or they're going to leave Rhode Island. Let me ask you this. The head of the 195 Commission, Jan Brody, says they need $25 million incentives proposed in Governor Raimondo's budget, as well as added tax incentives to make anything happen on the 195 land. Do you oppose that as well?
I do. Unfortunately, I do.
And are public officials perhaps too timid in the aftermath of 38 Studios to support public investments that could help to spark Rhode Island's economy?
No. And I could, if I was a betting woman, if this was to go to a floor vote right now, I don't really think this would pass. This would not pass at all because it's still raw. It still comes down to 38
And when you
Studios.
say this, you mean the Paw Sox?
I mean the Paw Sox proposal. I can't imagine this going through the General Assembly with the outcry from the taxpayers.
It seems like it's getting support. Just we read between the lines from House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello. That's kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal. I mean, it's an absolute huge deal. I mean, the Speaker is the man in charge, and when the Speaker votes for something, usually, it does pass. But I don't see it unless there's more information coming out. Unless more people go to that meeting that is going to be on Monday night that we just spoke about, that is now open to the
Monday
public.
Afternoon.
I think that's great. I think that's fabulous that it's open. Will this work in Providence? Will they stay in Rhode Island? I don't know. We're going to have to find out.
Well, what about that risk? So Jim Skeffington said, hey, look, I've already had 4 other out-of-state towns at last check that are interested in the Paw Sox. Says they might be sweeter deals there, but he wants to keep the team in Rhode Island. Are you comfortable with losing the Pawtucket Red Sox out of state the way the deal is now, you'd say goodbye to them?
Right now, I am comfortable protecting the taxpayers. That's my #1 priority, and that's my job as a state legislator. This is going to create jobs. This is going to create between 180 to 200 seasonal jobs. It's my understanding that is going to be 100 games per year. Are we going to have concerts there? Are they going to use it for soccer? Are they going to use it for other venues? That's a question that has to be answered, because that could also make a difference, where instead of the ballpark being closed for most of the year, bring in the concerts. Fenway Park does it. Fenway does it. They're going to have fireworks like they do at McCoy. That's a big draw in Pawtucket. There's still a lot that we don't know. So I think Monday afternoon, this meeting is I'm happy that it's open, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, the ownership has said they plan concerts, football games, and a series of other events, and that their intention is to have 100 events at the Providence Ballpark a year, including baseball. But let me ask you this. The Paw Sox ownership says the net economic cost for the state each year over 30 years would be $2 million. If you were convinced that there was a positive economic impact greater than $2 million, would you be more open to supporting this proposal?
Well, I'm not really sure, because I did take some notes, because I've been looking at numbers and doing some research on this, and it's my understanding that the owners would lease the stadium for $5 million a year for up to 30 years, and the state would sublease the stadium back to them for $1 million a year. So it's just I just find all these numbers a little ironic, that you're going to sublease it, you're going to lease it, you're going to spend $5 million, you're going to get $120 million back, and at the end of the day, we're not going to own the stadium. They're going to own this. That's my understanding, that as Rhode Islanders, we're not going to have a part in that stadium. We're going to pay for it, we're going to get some revenue back from it, but it's not our stadium.
Well, you know, and by the way, we have State Representative Doreen Costa on the program right now. So, she's been outspoken in this against the Paw Sox. Earlier on Newsmakers a few weeks back, we had Jim Skeffington here, who's obviously an ardent supporter of moving the stadium to Providence. You can see that online, WPRI.com. Rep, the state floated bonds for the current Paw Sox stadium, so they are, you know, the state already has a stake in that stadium there. What's the difference for you? Well,
the difference is the dire straits the state is in now. The economy was a lot different back in the day. Right now, the state is struggling. The deficit we have, we've got a budget that we have to pick apart, and I just personally don't think the state can afford anything right now.
I want to shift gears. We had Chairman John Taylor from Twin River on the first half, and you sat and listened to that. What do you think of the proposal to move Newport Grand to Tiverton?
I think it's brilliant.
So it sounds like you will vote to move the...
I think it's brilliant, because we have to keep pace with Fall River, and I think it's closer to Fall River. What is it, like a stone's throw from what they say? And I think it would be great. I think it would be fabulous. We can compete, and we can keep that revenue here in Rhode Island.
You're one of a relatively small number of Republicans in the General Assembly. The GOP has a new chairman, Brandon Bell.
Yes.
What do you see? How do you see the way forward for Republicans in Rhode Island to be a more competitive party?
Well, I think we did double our size, Ian. We did get a little credit. We went from 6 to 12.
Back to where it had been a couple years before.
Back to where it had been. But when a presidential comes, it's always difficult for the Republicans to keep their seats. But we have Brandon Bell, who is our new chairman, and I have never met anybody that has more energy than I do half the time. He is energetic. He's enthusiastic. He's out there. He's already recruiting candidates, and I have faith in him, and I hope that good things for us.
You've been a big supporter of efforts to have tighter sanctions for people who engage in sex trafficking. Yes. We see a lot more focus on this from the media and law enforcement. How do you think this will change what's happening with sex trafficking in Rhode Island? Do you think this will really make a dramatic impact on it?
I don't know if it's going to make a dramatic impact. I think it's going to make a significant impact. I've just started researching and working on sex trafficking legislation. I'm so excited that my bills did pass the House and the Senate, which is huge. Sex trafficking of minors is a disgusting thing that these pimps do, and they need to be held accountable, whether it be 40, 50 years. And if it was my opinion, I would give them life. And the problem with sex trafficking is a lot of times the girls that are kidnapped and trafficked, they don't come forward because they're embarrassed. They've either met them online or they know the person that kidnapped them. So the person never goes to jail. They never get arrested. And it takes an extremely strong woman to get up and say, okay, I'm going to testify and see the kidnapper again in court. And this is what these girls need to know. You can be strong. You need to face your kidnapper to keep them behind bars. And I've talked to, there's a couple of families that I'm in touch with that their kids have been trafficked and they still haven't come forward yet. So we need to bring these females forward, and their kidnappers need to be held accountable.
We have less than a minute left here. Rep, a proposed bill would give the ability for parents to have their kids opt out of the new park exam. Would you vote to support it, or would you?
I don't know. I haven't read it. I don't know enough about it.
How about the Taylor Swift tax? We have House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello now.
Yes, absolutely. Will not be supporting that in any way, shape, or form.
Why?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be pulled from the budget. I think it will be, but I'm going to tell you why. If you have $1 million home, you worked all your life for that home, and now they want to tax you again on it. You worked for it. That's yours.
All right, we're out of time here on Newsmakers. We thank our guest on the second half, State Representative Doreen Costa. And on the first half, we had Chairman of Twin River, John Taylor. If you missed any of it, it's online, WPRI.com. For Ian Donis, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers. I had one more question for you, but